it's time for another exciting episode of working on this 2008 Trailblazer, which we have been building on the channel to be the ultimate sleeper. Now, I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of the project. This car is the car that the Vortec 4200 originally came equipped in. And if you guys are familiar with our channel, you know that we've done quite a few of these engines in other platforms, and we've had a lot of success with them. We have found them to be a very robust platform, and we like to call them the Ameri-Barra or the American 2JZ because it really is the only offering here in the States that really can hold a candle to them. So I will admit I've wanted to do one of these Trailblazers for quite a while, and it's just been a case of these things are so dang heavy that I could never really bring myself to actually pull the trigger and do it. I've actually owned two other Trailblazers, kind of like this one. So we attempted to actually build one of my previous ones, and it just was not going well. The other problem with them is typically they're so rusted out that it's just like, why would I invest all this time and energy into something that is just gonna turn into dust in a few years? Shortly thereafter, we found this thing, a fairly low rust example of a 2008 Trailblazer, and the reason that we chose a 2008 is because NHRA does not require any bars in the car for a 2008 and later vehicle to go 10.00 in the quarter mile, assuming you keep all the airbags and all the other safety equipment intact and functional. So I set the goal. Let's go 10.00 in the quarter mile with this thing and build the ultimate sleeper. I want this thing to have all the creature comforts that came originally equipped on this thing. Heat, AC, heated seats, leather interior, sunroof, you know, wipers, blinkers, I want everything to just still be there. Heck, we're even gonna keep the radio. And I want this thing to be quiet enough that all of that is still relevant, and you know, this thing could truly be daily driven. So we got to work, and I decided that I wanted to delete the all-wheel drive. Now, the all-wheel drive in these vehicles it's a fairly well-designed system, but there's a few issues with it. One, it requires that the steering rack be towards the back of the engine, and that requires the engine to have a front sump transmission. And also, the front diff is mounted to the oil pan, and the drive shaft for the one side actually goes through the oil pan itself. And I just wasn't really a fan of this design. One, I really don't need all-wheel drive. For the times that I would like to go with this car, it simply is not required. I don't need the extra weight. I don't need the extra complication. And we've always had the saying of weight is the enemy. And having all that extra parasitic loss is also a big negative as well. I also wanted to get this thing to have a rear sump oil pan, and that required me to relocate the steering rack. So it was kind of a win-win. And that was sort of the first thing that we worked on. We completely re-engineered the front suspension on this thing. It uses a lot of components from a 4th gen Camaro and also a Malibu. The steering rack is from a 2015 Mustang, and that allowed us to get a rear sump oil pan in this car, along with losing quite a bit of weight. Now, for the transmission, I was thinking about being boring and just putting like a 4L80E, but then somebody contacted me. I want to say a big thanks to Tyler Bredhauser. He actually contacted me and said, hey, you should try one of these new Dodge 8HP 70 transmissions. And at first I was a little skeptical, but as soon as I heard that you could control one with a Max ECU, and Max ECU actually makes their own firmware that flashes right onto the transmission, I was convinced that we had to give this a shot. Now, in order to be able to take all that abuse from the engine and transmission, we had to upgrade the rear as well, and we converted to a Ford Explorer 8.8. We actually widened the rear. We used two of the longer axles from a Ford Explorer, and we now have a very robust rear end, very robust transmission, and a very robust engine. And we've covered the big three. We got a Chevy engine, a Dodge transmission, and a Ford rear end. And I've not even told you guys this, but we've actually named the car. We are calling this car Johnny Cash because of his song One Piece at a Time. This car is very much a hodgepodge of many different vehicles, and I thought it was kind of neat that we were kind of building the car one piece at a time with things from all different eras of GM, Ford, and Dodge vehicles. So guys, I want you to meet Johnny Cash. Now for the turbo and the manifold, I decided to build my own turbo manifold. I wanted to do a 6-into-1 style collector, and I wanted to try and keep it relatively equal length just because I was trying to get this thing to sound kind of cool. It has a VS Racing G42 8075 turbo. And then for the intercooler, we are using an intercooler from a tractor trailer. For the intake, we have built our own homemade intake using a set of billet intake runners and a MazWorks plenum. To keep the thing cool, we upgraded to a aluminum radiator, and we are using a burn down garage Silverado fan holder. So far that fan is doing a fantastic job keeping this thing cool. I have not seen this thing go over like 190 degrees, so I'm very happy with how that came out. Those are available through War Performance, so make sure you go check them out. In order to go 10-0s in the quarter mile, we probably could have done it with a factory long block engine, but I wanted to increase the safety factor a little bit and get some better components for the rods and pistons. So we decided to upgrade the engine with some Molnar rods and some Wiseco pistons, and we also decided to have the head ported by our friends over at Snyder Performance. The cam package, we're using our typical Crowler valve springs with a set of Schneider 66RH reground camshafts. We've used these on pretty much every build that we've done, minus a few, but all the later ones we've done. Big fan of how those perform, and it should easily be able to make the horsepower goals that we need to with this this package in order to get this thing to go 10-0s. So in the last episode, we had kind of left the video off with having a couple issues with the car that we had to figure out. And the first was it kind of bogged off the line when you let off of the trans brake. It didn't really want to light the tires off in the driveway, and what I found that to be was torque management. Now, as you guys know, we are running a factory ECU, and it's controlling almost nothing except for the throttle body. And looking back at the data from the burnout attempts in the driveway, I saw that the throttle was closing almost immediately after I let off the trans brake. This was relatively easy to fix. I literally just went in there and disabled the torque management and any traction control that was set up in the ECU. And that pretty much solved our issue. Now, the other issue that we were having was the ride height. And in order to show you guys what we did there, we're gonna have to get this thing up in the air and show you some of the bling that we have installed there. When I lowered the car onto the ground, I noticed that the car sat way lower than what I was really targeting. And I tried to fix this by installing spacers on top of the shock. I actually have one of them sitting right here, and that didn't really get it as high as what I wanted it to. So I then installed spacers onto the control arm for the factory control arm. These are the spacers that I was just talking about. I had these laser cut out, and then I welded them to the control arm. It was just a 1/2-inch spacer that you see here, but the problem is the factory control arm started to run into clearance issues with the control arm and the mounts on the car right in that location. So in order to solve that problem, the best solution that I could come up with was to convert to tubular control arms. So we happened to see these tubular spoon control arms at a flea market, And that is another big advantage of what we did here. By converting to 4th gen Camaro parts, finding parts like this is a lot easier and a lot more readily available. I paid $150 for both of the control arms. And if you're interested, these saved about 5 pounds of weight per side. Not that that really was our main concern. And then I made these little spacers here out of a piece of box tubing that I capped off and welded little spacers here in the middle in order to keep the bolt from collapsing the box tubing. And I spaced it up 1.5 inches. And now the car sits exactly where I would like it to. And then we dialed in all of the alignments. We had to machine our spacers here. You can see I had to move the control arm out quite a bit in order to get the caster location to where I wanted it to be. The bump steer, we don't have 100% dialed in, but it is going to be as good as what I am going to be able to get it. The tie rod end actually needs to go slightly lower on the control arm, but I don't have any room to take it lower, so we're just going to live with a tiny bit of bump steer and move on with our life. All right, guys, we are getting down to the end. We've pretty much fixed all of the issues that we found in the previous episode, and that is how these cars typically go, especially when you've done a lot of custom work like we have on this car. So it was pretty much time that we could take this thing for a drive. So let's go on a drive. This thing, it shifts quick. braking that you realize how fast you're going with this thing. This is kind of crazy. Alright, we're gonna wrap this one up. It's that's enough horsing around for today.
Next time on the Neglect 57 YouTube channel, can this 4,500 pound beast go 10s? You pay for the whole seat, but you only need the edge. Be there or be square.